a girl that, is in computer science, and I'm going to give general advice in tech for people that are interested in getting into this. Um, and at first, like that worked. Like I was giving advice that now is like super basic, like, oh, like CS, like Harvard CS 50, like, oh, like
Mm-hmm.
this resource to learn like how to make your first program, like um, things like that. But then, I mean, I had to like niche down a little bit, because then I guess like a lot of people were recommending the same type of things. And also I was getting like a lot of like guys that were like angry at me for like silly reasons or whatever, or because they
Wait,
disagreed with
really?
something. Yeah. Or especially when I talked about the topic of women in tech, like back in the day, not anymore that much, except for like some videos from maybe last year, but like back in the day, like there was like not really like any conversation about like women in tech, women in STEM, and like all of these things. And then I would talk about like, okay, so why aren't there like a lot of like women in the industry? And I was saying like, oh, like if you look at this research and this data, it's because like around the 80s, like there was a lot more of a push for like hobbies being introduced, kind of like, how kind of like I got introduced to it through video games. Then like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the time, like guys were introduced to it by like their dads giving them like a PC because it's like a boy thing or something, or
Mm-hmm.
also like video games, like things like that. Because originally, like the computer girls were like coder girls, like it was like the
Mm-hmm.
secretary job. So I would just kind of like bring up things like that, and then I would like get people so mad, and it's like, no, it's like women are just like naturally inferior and they're just not interested. A lot of the comments were basically like, oh, studies have shown that in the most egalitarian countries, like women still won't go for STEM, they're just biologically like, which is just a bunch of BS. And I also, yeah, and speaking of that study, like there was even like another like Harvard study that disproved that study, because all of the data that they were using was like super messed
Mm-hmm.
up, like the metric was messed up. So
Yeah.
then they're just handing out like disproven studies to like try to justify their own biases against, women.
Wow. That's really hard to hear that they are like using misinformation as a way to sort of paint the picture that women shouldn't be in tech, which is kind of weird because wasn't like weren't like the first developments of technology a lot of women helped in that way, kind of like Grace Hopper